Hello, everybody. How you doing? I am Damon Osa Cunningham, and I am glad to be back for another edition of HAMA Live. I had to take a little break. Our last two um, broadcasts were cut short. I wasn't feeling well, unfortunately, but I'm feeling much better now. Especially since we have a guest, someone who I've wanted to highlight for a while now, the phenomenal Miss Jamie Philbert. Um, Miss Philbert is an artist. She is a choreographer. She's a dancer. She is a stick fighter, and she is here to talk to us today about Kalinda, and basically and everything that she's doing, everything that's going on with her. Um, so the first time I saw Miss Philbert was in a video. She was in a video for Blitz the Ambassador, and she played the ancestor. She played the spirit. She did a masquerade, and I was just taken back um, at the movements that this masquerade was putting on, and then I saw the video that I'm about to play next, and I said there's something familiar about that dance, and those movements look very familiar, and I did a little research, and I realized it was the same person. um, and I said, oh man, she's a stick fighter as well. Wow, so I'm really intrigued now. So I'm going to play a short video. This is one of her films that she helped create. I believe it's a memorial to her mentor. So when we come back, we'll be with Miss Jamie Philbert.
How to walk. Yes, sir. How to walk. Yes, sir. To those who
For some reason, I'm having some technical difficulties, Jamie. I'm not sure what's going on.
No
It's the
problem.
second, yeah, the second time I've tried to play some videos and it just didn't work out. So we're just gonna have to talk today.
That's all right.
Okay. So introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let me say thank you for having me. I appreciate your kind words and for encouraging and supporting and following the work that I do. Um, I am, as you stated, an artist is probably the easiest way to explain to people, but I'm a filmmaker, a curator, dancer, choreographer, writer. I sing as well, and I write music. I teach, which is a very important part of the work that I do. I've been dancing, studying dance, performing dance for over 20 years. Um, Very connected. It's always been connected to my ancestors and venerating that space. Um, and what else can I tell you? I'm really bad at talking about myself from that space. I'm better if you ask me questions.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. That's a good start. You said a lot of things. You're a Renaissance woman. Um, so let's start with your dance, because that's where I was introduced to you with. How did you start dancing? When did you start dancing? When did you know you were a dancer?
Hmm. What's so funny is now, I use the term more now because I understand it's what people are comfortable with. Um, but because Kalinda is my practice of life, now I understand that what I've always felt about me not just being a dancer was correct. But the art form of dance I
Sorry.
started. Okay, it's all right. It's all right. It's all
Technical
right.
difficulty. Sorry.
That's all right. That's that Kalinda energy.
Yes.
I started dancing in, well, I'm Trinidadian. I was born in Trinidad, raised here until I was 9 years old. My mother, Veronica Philbert, my father, Dennis Philbert, decided to move to America in 1990, which was actually the year of the coup here in Trinidad and Tobago. So we moved before the coup happened. We moved in
Okay.
April of that year. What's ironic about that time is that my father used to work for the Red House.
Okay.
So the move was, for me, when I look back at it, it was quite ancestral and it was quite divine for us to move at the time we did. My parents didn't know that the coup was going to happen, but we weren't here in Trinidad to experience that. So had we been here, my father would have actually been at work that day when the coup happened. So that could have been a whole different story and experience for my life. I started dancing when I was 12 years old. I went to a school called Philbert Middle School for the Gifted and Talented. It's a school that you had to take an academic test to get into. And I always brag and think
That's here in the
about
States.
that was actually, yeah, in the States, in Bushwick,
Okay. Okay.
in Brooklyn. Yeah, we moved to Brooklyn and we lived in Bed-Stuy, but we went to
Look,
school. My sister, yeah, that's me.
that
That
looked like
is
some
me.
Brooklyn steps right there. So I figured
That
I
is
put
a
that.
brownstone, our very first brownstone apartment in Bed-Stuy on Marcy Avenue. And yeah, it was quite a transition. I have a piece that I wrote, and it's to be a longer book, but it speaks about the assimilation of my tongue, because my accent is very much not straight Trinidadian. It's very much a hybrid of my very Bed-Stuy ways and my very Trinidadian upbringing, and has come up more since I've been home, because that assimilation happened because going to school in Brooklyn, I went to school with children. You know how children can be. I was an immigrant child. Had a straight Trini accent, and they would make fun of me for speaking the way I spoke. They made fun of me for that, and they made fun of me because of my complexion. And I went home, remember going home that first day of school and telling my mother, I'm going to have to learn how to speak differently because I know that I'm smarter than these children. And I don't want them thinking that I'm stupid or something, or any kind of imagination in their brain that's making them think that I'm not bright because of an accent
Right.
that I had. I also told her that, I asked her at that moment, like, Mommy, am I dark? And she like laughed and she's like, yes, Jamie, you're dark. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't know that that was even a problem to be dark. And she's like,
Yeah.
explain to me that it's not. I said, well, okay, well, I don't care about that. I'm fine with that. I can deal with that. My mouth will handle that part of it. But there's something about wanting to be understood, and not have to deal with that accent part of it in school. So I did like a British accent, I did a Spanish accent, I did a French accent, and then I did an American accent. And so
Let me hear your American accent. Let me hear the American.
it's you don't hear it. You don't hear it coming out a little bit. when I go into like full Bed-Stuy mode, that do or
Uh-huh.
die mode, then it really comes out. But
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so so I started the school that I went to initially was a school actually that my aunt taught at, so it was easy to transition to that school because that's my mother felt comfortable with us going there because my aunt was there at that school. And then I took a test to get into Philbert Schuyler, got into the school, and they had electives. So you had to audition to be in different programs. You actually got to choose. So I auditioned for dance. I chose dance and drama. I chose dance and music. So I
Okay.
was in orchestra. So I played the viola. And then I got into major orchestra, and I decided not to go into major orchestra. Major orchestra is basically you were able to then perform. So you weren't just taking classes, you would then be part of the performing group in the school. Decided
Okay.
not to do it. I wanted to act. So I decided to take up drama and dance. And I fell in love. My first artistic endeavor would have been writing. I've been writing since I was 7 years old. And writing was my first love. It was something that it helped to encourage my imagination. It helped me to create worlds that didn't exist in the world that my body was living inside of. It brought forth certain transmissions that now I understand like are connected to everything that I do at this present moment. So dance was another iteration of writing for me. I had never felt anything like it before. I started dancing in school, and simultaneously, I also started dancing in church. So I immediately understood what it meant to have a spiritual side to that dancing. Um, my mother, I remember sitting in church and watching the dances in church, and what I had seen in church, I hadn't seen like in school, and what it was able to do to people, the people that were dancing, but also the people that were experiencing the dance, watching it.
Right.
And me being one of the people that were watching, I was just like, what is this? Like, this is like amazing. What am I feeling right now? What is happening? And my mother, I told her that I wanted to do it. Before I could get that out, she's like, if you're going to dance in school and do secular dancing, you're going to do dancing for the Lord too. So I was just like, okay, like, whatever you say, lady, like, fine.
Right.
Um, and that understanding at that young age, I started dancing with a dance group at church, but eventually, because of my skill level, and not so much a technical level, but I think that what I expressed spiritually, I began having solos in the church. So a lot of times I was asked to perform by myself.
Okay.
I didn't look at it as performance then, I looked at it as ministry. And I pretty much still look at what I do as a ministry, and not from a Christian standpoint, but from a standpoint of understanding spirit and understanding ancestral DNA. So yeah, at 12 years old, I started dancing. I started teaching dance at 14. My church had after school program, and they were looking for an adult teacher. They couldn't find one, and then they asked me to do it. So I was making $50 a week, US dollars, teaching dance class at 14 years old. So that was my first time teaching dance, and beginning to understand that aspect of it too, what it meant to transmit this information to others. Um, I went to LaGuardia High School for the Performing Arts, which is better known as the Fame School. The movie Fame is done
Okay.
after my high school. So another school that I had to audition for. Um, did the audition, got a call back, got into the school. So that helped me to shape the technical aspects of my dancing. So I studied ballet, modern, jazz. I was also simultaneously going to, I was on scholarship at this space called Charles Moore Dance Theater. And
Mhm.
Charles Moore was my family base, and it's where I learned a certain amount of, I was nurtured in that space. I understood the history of West African dance in that space. I got to
Okay.
be able to express myself in ways that I couldn't necessarily do it at LaGuardia all the time, but brought that into the space and started to understand as I grew that that needed to happen. I needed to connect. And dance was not just something that was an aesthetic, but it had to come from inside of me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, as I grew, I was very connected to the fact that dance was not this physical thing, but a spiritual experience that my body was having. And the space that I teach from is teaching people how to activate their spirit in order to move.
Mm.
Started a dance company at the age of 19, and got a lot of reviews in the New York Times. Our first performance was at Lincoln Center out of doors. This was after I had my own produced show. My mentor, Aziza, actually produced my first show, and that show was called Testify. And the show was based on different topics that were happening in the world, different things that I had not personally experienced, but again, things that were coming through a DNA transmission in my body. Because
Okay.
later on in life, I would experience those things personally, um, or I would experience it through like friends of mine or other people that I would then have to like counsel or guide in some sort of way. Um, and the rest is pretty much history. I choreographed for a while in New York City. I taught for a very long time, and I started to develop my own style of moving based on choreographers that I had worked with, teachers that I've had, dance schools that I went to. Another dance program that I was a part of was called American Dance Festival. And American Dance Festival was a place where I realized that it confirmed or affirmed that space of it really was not about my physical. I saw women dancing that were not the typical dancer bodies. They were big black women with big thighs and big booties and like, moved like feathers,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't realize because of the school that I went to, I didn't see that aesthetic. And I was told in high school that one of the things that LaGuardia does is they do conferences. So at one of the conferences, I was told that I'm a beautiful dancer, but it's a shame that I'm so big. I was probably 125 pounds. And because I was shaped like a black woman, that was not
Wow.
acceptable for a European dance form. And while we still, don't get me wrong, LaGuardia supported, and I still owe so much to the experience that I had there. But as a young black immigrant child, it was something that stuck in my mind forever, and what that meant, especially knowing that I wasn't big. There were people that had like bulimia, anorexia, different things that they went through, and not necessarily young black girls, like young European girls had this. And I always looked at it like, well, I know I'm gonna eat. I'm not gonna not eat. That's not gonna happen. So we're gonna have to try to figure out what this means. So it meant for me then reshaping my body. So that then took me into how I was training my body and what things I
Okay.
needed to do, then reshape my body. So
Okay.
it's pretty much the dance training aspect of it.
Well, I'm gonna try to show. We're gonna try to show this video again.
Okay.
Let's see if this works.
How to walk. Yes, sir. To those who have faith, faith not necessary. You see, we don't really have no tragedy because we living in the border of heaven and hell. We moaning and groaning and rooting and marching because you see our way is a walking way. We vulnerable and we just carry every emotion like the notes of a love way that guiding our feet to carry on, to carry on it. Because knowing the shoulders upon which you stand does make you feel tall. And if you stand up just right, your head might just reach all the way to Zion. So some say we just pivot past pain and peril. No, that ain't true. What we just do is walk. Because we walking all the way home. Because walking is a thing that stick man does do. And if I don't say it, we damn good at it. So we go walk straight on them.
Let me a boy to play, Tony, let me a boy to play. Aye, 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 Tony, let me a boy to play. Let me a boy to play, Tony, let me a boy to play. Aye, 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 Tony, let me a boy to play.
Okay, did that play?
It did.
Okay, all right. So, because I'm trying to use just two different devices, so it played on my one device, didn't play on my second device. I just wanted to make sure that it played.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
tell us about that film.
So that film, want to give thanks to the ancestor Tony Hall, who was a artistic giant in this space. And I would have met Tony through Rondell Benjamin, who is a co-dreamer and co-researcher and a guide of mine in Kalinda. I call him my Fort Eye. Um, and Rondell has been doing this work in Kalinda and researching and pushing the culture forward and making sure that the veneration of the ancestors of Kalinda has been happening for over 20 years now. Um, so I met Tony through Rondell, and this happened because when I came across Kalinda, I had actually had a car accident, and the car accident left me with a dislocated shoulder. My right shoulder and my whole right side of my body was doing things. My entire body just went through something that I had not experienced before. What I did not understand at that exact moment that the accident happened, that was what I understand it now as is a call to Kalinda. And Kalinda has been calling me my entire life, and I just didn't realize it. And Kalinda is something that it is not outside of you, it's inside of you. So Tony Hall has also done a lot of work around Juve Carnival inside of a theater process. So using the Juve process inside of theater and teaching theater.
Okay.
And he's incorporated Kalinda and another stick style that's in the space that's not really done as much called Gaka, which is an East Indian style. So he had a theory about putting this school together. So he had basically dreamt up, and this is something he had told Benji, aka Rondo Benjamin. He told Benji that he had kind of dreamt up Bois Academy, where Rondo is one of the co-founders and I'm the director there. He dreamt up that space and the work that Bois Academy is doing. So when Benji and I met, and I came across Kalinda and I was introduced to it, and I met another ancestor, give thanks to him now before we go any further, King David Matthew Brown, who is very much a part of my spirit and my being, and thinking about him a lot today, actually. When I met these two people, it became clearer to me that this is where I was supposed to be, that I had found my people. So Tony would invite Benji to the school to teach Kalinda and to his students, his college students. So he had a space called Trinity College here in Trinidad, that's a part of UWE's campus, and another program that's part of the DCFA program, the creative program at UWE as well. So Benji would go and teach, and he invited me to come and basically share what I was working on with a technique that I developed and founded called the Philbert Kalinda technique. And it's a technique for dance and performance, also dealing with that theatrical side of the art form. So I met Tony through that, and one of the greatest things that Tony did for me was the encouragement to move forward in the space with this. And you know, I knew Tony for a year, and in that year, his quiet way of encouraging me and like, which is very Kalinda, like, go play, like, you know, step forward in the Gael and do what it is that you need to do because you got it. So Tony offered that space. Tony passed away in April, and when I found out that he passed away, it was no hesitation. It was quite visceral that I knew that I needed to go and film this work. My friend Ariel John, actually, we were having a conversation a couple of days before, a week or so before, where she had wrote me and she wanted me to do a kind of a COVID kind of piece with dancing in the street. And because I have always danced in the street, I've always done site work. Dance was never a thing where I had to do it on a stage only. I understand the dance is to be done everywhere, and at any moment. So I was very open to doing it. When Tony passed, though, I realized that I couldn't do that particular project that she had in mind. And what I needed to do was to pay homage to Tony. So she and my other friend, Mohammed Mawakil, went out with me that day, and I understood very clearly that I was going to do ancestral work. So I chose 3 different crossroads spaces to basically assist in Tony's transition.
Okay.
So the first space was Little Carib Theater, and it's one of the spaces that he's very connected to. The second space was in front of the Treasury Building here in Trinidad, where Cambule riots would have happened, which is another like stick or Kalinda location. And the third space was War Academy's building because of Tony's connection to that space and his pushing forward of what the work that we were doing. So it was a very spiritual thing. It was not meant to be a performance in that way. I'm glad that people appreciate it as such because it's part of the work that I do. But me being a performer, I understand it to be something beyond entertaining people. I'm not an entertainer. I'm very much an artist. And artists to me are basically the voice, the tongue, the legs, the arms of God. So that's the space that I did this piece from. The morning that I got up to do it, I got up and I was in grief. So I got up and I was like, hey, Jim, we got to go do this. I got back in my bed like 2-3 times because I just didn't have the strength. And I kept hearing Tony's voice saying, process, process, process. And I was like, okay, that means that you can slow down and you can allow this process to be whatever it needs to be. I sew as well, too, and I have a clothing line along with my company, Art on Purpose. And I started to sew. And honestly, that moment of sewing what I wore in the video was one of the easiest times that I've ever sewn. I really felt like I had Tony's assistance in sewing because what I had planned to wear, what I had created in my mind or what I wanted to wear, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make this fancy head wrap. And, I want something that, I can move in, but not showing too much because my body likes to just, I use a Christian reference. They like to do the dance of David. So it likes to come out of my clothes and I'm fine with it, but it's not necessarily the best thing all the time for the public. So I made this outfit. And when I finished making the outfit, I laid it on the bed and it was in a perfect cross. So it had correlated immediately for me with the crossroad idea that I had to go out and do this thing at the crossroads so that it could assist Tony in his travel. It also connected to Kalinda and what happens inside of Stick. When I made the headpiece, it did not turn out to be a headpiece. It turned out to be this veil. In our culture, in African culture, when the Igungun are dressed, which is the same kind of masquerade you would have seen me wear in the Blitz the Ambassador video, same vein of masquerade, that being, you're no longer yourself. Yeah, so you're allowing a spiritual energy to take over your body in order to do the work that's there. So it was work. It wasn't the typical physical labor. It was definitely spiritual work and going to a certain liminal space and a selfless space, a space that I had to empty out myself in order to allow spirit to do what it needed to do to assist Tony.
I felt that. I definitely felt the spirit in that piece. I saw you did another live stream with brother Carlos about body movements and dance. And you made a comment that you learned a long time ago that you learned that when you move, you have the power to affect people. And that's a very deep power to have. And that's definitely how I've been drawn to you. It was your movements. Like I've never like Googled or researched somebody from just watching a video. But when I saw that Blitz the Ambassador video, and like I Googled you, like, who was that? Who was that spirit? Like I have to know who that is. And then it was again when I think I had friended you on Facebook through Rundell before I realized that you were the same, that you portrayed the spirit in that video. So it was definitely your movements, and your power. And it's definitely an expression. You're correct. There is something coming out of you when you move that the people who are attuned can tell it's not you anymore. It's definitely something coming out. You mentioned masquerades. I saw, going through your Facebook page, you have a lot of masks. A lot of your pictures are masked. We don't see your face in a lot of your pictures.
Yeah.
Do you assume personas?
Not when for those single pictures. That picture you just showed just now is actually what's interesting is I think that in my fashion design and jewelry design, I've always created masks. I've always been drawn to them. And I think that if I'm thinking about it now and I've thought about it before, that it's definitely connected to understanding that my body is a vessel for my ancestors. When I started my first dance company, it happened because I had a dream, not to sound like Martin Luther King, but I had a dream that I had a dance company. And in the dream, I had locks. I didn't have locks at the time that I had the dream. And it was the first dance concert I was having. So when we had our first dance show for the company at the time was called Echoes Dance Company. So when we had that first show, my locks were actually at the point that it was in the dream. And it was like literally the same space that I was in. So I named the company Echoes because it meant in the path of our ancestors. So I've always understood that my work and my body was not for Jamie. Yeah, there are things that Jamie wants to do, create in a creative way, but that channel is coming through from another space, an ancestral realm, if you will.
Okay.
So the mask that you showed, the first mask that you showed, is from Makita Thomas has a group here called Belmont Baby Dolls that they play masks for Carnival, and she's a friend of mine, and she asked me to come be a part of it, and we had sat. She had all these different, that particular year, this past year actually, she was doing spirit dolls, and the spirit dolls, she had different names for each spirit doll, and she asked me what did I want to portray, and I told her that I wasn't participating in Carnival, and I wasn't participating in Carnival because of my walk inside of Kalinda. I understand that Kalinda predates Carnival, and it is actually the reason why Carnival exists. So I could no longer participate in Carnival the way that I had before, unless if Kalinda was involved, and if Kalinda was at the forefront of that. So I told her that I would play the spirit of Kalinda. So she was totally on board with that. And I didn't play Mas with them on the day, on the Monday and Tuesday, but what I told her I would do is I would do the launch of her band, and I would also perform at UE has a campus yard show that they do that basically celebrates all the different traditional masks that we have here. So Jab Jab, the Jab Molasses, the Blue Devils, all these different masks. So Makita's band performed at it, and that's where those two pictures are from. So it just so happens that her iteration of mask that year was that the dolls' faces were covered. To exonerate the same thing I was talking about before about that Agun energy that you were then taking on the spirit of your doll. So one thing that I had said when I played the mask is that I am the doll that I wanted to be. I'm that doll. And as a little girl, I remember the baby doll mask can be portrayed in many different ways. So I really appreciated the way that Makita disseminates this mask and the history that she tries to put inside of it. And for me, being able to be a part of that, it reminded me of when I was a little girl and having dolls, and I would cut up the dolls' hair and I would try to color them because they didn't look like me, So in that moment when I played mask, I was the doll that I always wanted. So I was appreciative to have the opportunity to do that and play myself, even though it was masked.
Wow. That's important. That is definitely important. I had it's funny. I had an argument with somebody, and they're trying to. It was about white privilege, and it was actually a very good friend of mine, white guy, and he couldn't understand white privilege. And I said, have you ever had to go to 3 stores to find a doll that looked like your daughter?
Hmm.
And he said, no. I said, well, I have. And that just that hit him, you know.
Yeah.
I understand, you know, having those role models, something to look forward to. I actually went like maybe 2 years ago, and I bought. I found them online. The action figure that I used to play with when I was little, you know, just so that I could have him, you know, just because it means so much. So I can only imagine getting to play your dream like that.
Yeah. And it's also, you know, baby dolls are connected to Jamet culture, and
Okay.
Jamet is a French word, or it transfers to the French word diameter, speaking
Okay.
to people that lived on the periphery. And that relates right back to Kalinda. Jamet people are Kalinda people, and the Jamet speaks to a certain kind of otherness as well in the space. It's not something that's gendered, so it's not male or female. Jamet could be a
Okay.
man or a woman. So inside of playing that mask, it was also that, and baby doll mask speaks to a certain female empowerment as well too. There's different ways the mask is played. I don't want to get all into that, but just to speak about the Jamet part of it, the baby doll was a Jamet. She was a warrior.
Mm.
She was the mother. You know, she was the child. She was the woman who had to take care and nurture the village in a certain kind of way. The woman that was looked at in a sexual way, but then used her sexuality to fight, you know,
Mm.
and to create a certain sort of warriorhood.
Okay. So when did you start? When did your journey take you to Kalinda?
So that accident would have been the first time I was really inside of Kalinda. But
Okay.
before that, my entire life has been an iteration of Kalinda.
Hmm.
From my mother telling me stories of her going to school in St. Vincent. My mom is from St. Vincent. My dad is from Trinidad. Um, Going to school in St. Vincent and her walking with a knife that she would put pepper on. And that was her way of protecting herself.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you understand that a knife is one thing, and then to put pepper on the knife,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
whole
you got
nother
that.
level. Yeah, you're not. Once
Yeah.
you get caught with that, you're not hitting back. You're not doing anything.
No,
So
no.
that's a very Kalinda mindset. And I don't know how much my mom would have known about stick fighting, about Kalinda, but again, Kalinda is something that's born inside of you.
Mhm.
So I understand now that she definitely had that mindset, and she definitely passed it on to me. But beyond passing it on to me, I feel like I was born that way. I'm the only child that my mother had that almost killed her. And when I say almost killed her, like
In
on the
birth.
day that I was born, she had a really hard labor, and she literally almost died making me.
Wow.
And my father was like, what the story goes, that my father was outside the hospital, him and his sisters, and my dad named me. And I was named after Jamie Somers, the Bionic Woman. So I definitely embody that like my whole life, you know.
Okay.
So though, for me, when I look back at it, those have been my first experiences, learning how, watching my mother cook, watching how she nurtured and prepared food for our family, watching her be an entrepreneur with very little education, and that education not stopping her. My mother had a third grade education, and she didn't go to school past that, but my mother had several businesses. She was a person who left Trinidad to go prepare a space for the rest of the family, which is also very Kalinda, you know, that matriarchal energy and understanding that the woman was leading the space in a particular way. The woman was providing. And not that my dad was not a provider, he was very much that. But my mother was the one who she had the last say. She was the one that was making the decisions. And when I think about the brilliance of my parents, I think about now what my father had to understand in order to make sure that that space was there for my mother to lead our family.
Gotcha.
In the dance world, I would have always been a part of call and response dances. I studied West African drumming, all these different things. The rhythms that I grew up dancing to, the dances that I learned were all Kalinda dances. I just didn't know that that's what I was doing. So when
Okay.
I came back home in 2015, my first walk with Kalinda would have been, I got a job at the ministry, and I was a movement and dance coordinator for a theater company. And the first play that they did was called Man Better Man. And the play is a play about Kalinda. It is not really, it's very stereotypical in terms of how the play is written and how it's done, because it does not venerate what a bois man is, which is a stick man. BWA is the Creole word, BOIS is the French word, and just translates as wood or stick.
Okay.
But it was my first introduction into that world. So I had to do a lot of research on Kalinda at that time, because I had to create movement, I had to create exercises, I had to create different cognitive things for them to do. And that took me then going into this world of Kalinda and watching a lot of stick, interviewing people and all those sorts of things. So that would be my first iteration. When I had that job, we went to Carafesta, which is a Caribbean, it's basically the whole Caribbean gets together to do arts expressions. And we went to Barbados to represent Trinidad and Tobago. And on the first day that we were there, I was hit in the head with a stick that actually I went to go get because they needed a stick to put on the flagpole as a flagpole.
Okay.
And I got hit in the back of my head. And because of my spirit and how I am, and understanding now that's very a Kalinda spirit, it's not just a Jamie thing. I like held my head when I went down, and I immediately went and got some ice. And 2 seconds later, the contingent was moving, so I had to go. So I went right back into work mode and walking the road. It's hot. I'm sweating. I have a headache. My head is feeling crazy, and I'm healing people's headaches. So I'm like helping people heal their headaches. I'm taking care of everybody. And at some point, I forgot that I got hit. The next day, when I woke up, my brain felt like it was moving around in my head. So I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I didn't realize that I had a concussion. And in my mind, I had never had a concussion before. So I ended up actually being out for the rest of the trip. Tremors, blackouts, you name it, I'd experienced it. So that was actually the second concussion I would have gotten. The first concussion I would have gotten was when I was probably 7 or 8 years old here in Trinidad, playing He-Man and She-Ra with my next door neighbor, jumping up and down on the bed. And her father walks in the room, and in Trinidad we'll call it goat mouth, somebody like putting their mouth on you in a certain kind of way. So he walks in the room and he goes, all the children stop playing, one of them go fall and bust all their head. So bust head Kalinda, bust head Jamie. So I fall and bust my head on the edge of this iron rod, and I'm bleeding profusely. Again, same kind of thing that happened when I was 37 years old, happened when I was 7, where it happened, but I wasn't really crying until I saw the blood. So then it was another story. I got stitches in my head. So that was my first bust head. My second bust head would have been in Barbados. And then the third concussion I would have gotten would have been in that car accident. So all those concussions for me are a call to Kalinda. It was Kalinda wanting me to come fully inside of it to teach me how to protect my head. And if we understand what the symbolism of your head is, your ori, that opening that's there, that allows a certain amount of divine space between you and the ancestors, they needed me to protect that because of the work that I was already doing and the work that they still have for me to do.
Okay.
So that was my entry into Kalinda.
Wow.
So
you said bust head. Tell us the I've heard Rondell say that as well. So tell us the importance of that in Kalinda.
So it is an offering. So you are when you play Kalinda, you are trying to bust the person's head, but it is not in the way that is perceived as a thing of violence. The offering of that blood is blood for the drum. It's blood for the ancestors. Yeah. Okay. So that bust head moment is that. It's also a moment of opening up of consciousness, right? Okay. So just to really simply explain it that way, like it's the best way. It's an awakening. It's a consciousness moment.
Okay. Because the first time I saw Kalinda, I couldn't understand what I was watching. It's a lot of movements, a lot of feints, and it was short, brief actions, and they would tie up. And then I'm like, well, what happened? And it was swing, wing, block, block, tie up, and I couldn't figure it out. So luckily, I met Rondell, Facebook, like a year later, and asked him to explain it to me, and and he did. He said, well, we're trying to, you're trying to go for the head, like that's what when you buzz ahead. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense. You don't want to, you guys are throwing hard, and so I don't want to. You block 1 and 2, you get in, you tie the guy up because you don't want to get your head bust. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense now.
Right. But also, hold on 1 second. Let me get my charger.
Okay, all right, no problem. I'm going to try to show another video while we're waiting for Jamie.
No man afraid, no stick man, no man afraid, no demand. Bah! Anancio, they're making a plan to kill you. They're making a plan to kill you. All them bombers want to stop you.
When they see my blow, 40 miles below, we're going to Addis Ababa to get a loaded revolver.
From the day I hold me boy, me mama call me a murderer. Only day who want. If the sergeant tried to stop me, the doctor go dress his body.
If the sergeant tried to stop me.
If the sergeant tried to stop me, the doctor go dress his body.
If the sergeant tried to stop me.
If the sergeant tried to stop me, the doctor go dress his body.
No matter what you throw at me, this ain't nothing compared to what I have faced at the hands of the dastardly dashing rogues of Maruga.
No man afraid, no stick man. Bah!
Okay, we are waiting for Jimmy to. She's having some technical difficulties here, so we're going to wait for her to come back on. We have a few more of her videos that we have. We're going to try to. So this is one of her videos from her organization Art on Purpose, where she's working with some of her children in this video, I believe.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open up. 1, 2. 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, see, still waiting on Miss Philbert here. So this is So I'm gonna play her film one more time.
How to walk. Yes, sir. To those who have faith, faith not necessary. You see, we don't really have no tragedy because we living in the border of heaven and hell. We moaning and groaning and rooting and marching because you see our way is a walking way. We vulnerable and we just carry every emotion like the notes of a love way that guiding our feet to carry on, to carry on it. Because knowing the shoulders upon which you stand does make you feel tall. And if you stand up just right, your head might just reach all the way to Zion. So some say we just pivot past pain and peril. No, that ain't true. What we just do is walk. Because we walking all the way home. Because walking is a thing that stick man does do. And if I don't say it, we damn good at it. So we go walk straight on them.
Let me a boy to play, Tony, let me a boy to play. Aye, 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 Tony, let me a boy to play. Let me a boy to play, Tony, let me a boy to play. Aye, 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 Tony, let me a boy to play.
Okay. We still waiting for Jamie. She sent me a WhatsApp message, so she is trying to log back on. And I know no one wants to see my ugly mug. So let's. I'm going to run these two short videos again. Hopefully, give us some more time. This one was given to us by Rondell Benjamin. Oh wait, oh here she's coming.
Bye.
All right, there she is. Cool. So
that was a bus head moment.
It's all right. It's all right because I played some videos. I played a couple videos while you were
good.
out. So
But just so they understand bus head, that's bus head. And in bus head, you take your bus head and you go your way.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna show you what I showed. So I showed one video from you working with your kids.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Open up. 1, 2. 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, turn 1, 2, 3, turn 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, turn 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, turn 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, stop. Good job.
My babies, I miss them.
So what was that? Were those some Kalinda movements there?
Those were Kalinda movements.
Okay.
Kalinda, because of the transmission of Kalinda in Caribbean spaces in the Americas, meaning not just America, like the United States of America, but the Caribbean and other spaces as well. It was not just always done with stick, right? The stick would have been banned at certain points. and it would not have always been iterated in that way because of enslavement and colonization. And also, not just because of those things, but because Kalinda is a technology. And because she is such a brilliant technology, she learned how to disguise herself in different ways. So, although we didn't have the stick in our hand, you see the same type of movement. So, the scars, you'll see a lot of scarf dances. In Trinidad, they will be called the matador dances as well, too. So those dances were done with the scarf, but it was the same energy behind it. There's a word in Bantu culture, which is the roots of Kalinda. Many people think that it's Ifa or Orisha, but that's actually a mistake that people are making, and that they make the mistake inside of, yes, somebody's writing this capoeira samba. All of those are thoughts of Kalinda. Yeah. So inside of that movement, it's still iterating the same energy. There's a word in Bantu culture, and Bantu cosmology speak directly to a lot of the rituals that we have inside of Kalinda. And one of the terms is called N2, NTU, and that describes your vital force, the energy that you bring inside of the space. And the steps that you would see are different cut steps. They're different steps that you would use to advance onto your opponent. Kalinda means, Maureen Warner Lewis speaks to it, meaning the ka, speaking to the drum or the way of the drum or the pathway of the drum, and lenda being to oppose. So the way I like to explain it is that it's the way of the opposing drum. And opposition, not just in terms of warfare, although Kalinda is a ritualized warfare, but also in terms of the dances. So there was competitive that were done. There were dances where you have to dance by yourself inside of, so and there were group dances as well too. And that would go back again to Carnival and the Kalinda bands that or the Jammet bands that they had, and the competition and the rivalry that would happen inside of those moments, which can definitely be viewed as violence, but it is not violence in the way that we perceive it. Yeah, it was ritualized. So there was something else happening inside of that activation of spirit, inside of them using their N2 inside of the space.
Okay. How does one train Kalinda? So a lot of our viewers are, strict martial artists. So one of the things that we've done is we've tried to bridge the gap between what people consider a strict martial art like karate or wrestling, where there's forms and there's written down, you have to do these katas, and they have a problem recognizing African martial arts as martial arts because they lack that form, that strict formation. So
we don't lack formation. Our system is different because our systems are a way of life. Okay. So you hear them say that about Tai Chi and different martial arts forms outside of African martial arts, but it really is a way of life. So it comes from the way that you learn when you're cooking. So sometimes it's not for somebody to go, okay, here, let me teach you how to play Kalinda. You get a stick in your hand and your DNA teaches you how to play Kalinda. Yes, okay. You will have teachers, you will have people in the space that will teach you certain things about Kalinda, but we as African people, it's not that we did not train, we did train, but it was literally daily and everything we do. From the games that we played, there's a song called Brown Girl in the Ring. So a lot of the children's games that they played are Kalinda games. So it's how I teach the children as well too. So we'll do things like we'll make a circle and they might have to pass the bois. So they're literally catching the bois in the circle. And those things are coordination. It builds a certain kind of perception inside of your skills. So it's not always the thing where, okay, we're going to train in these katas. There's no katas inside of Kalinda, but there are different stick steps that you would do, right? But they're done inside of dances. The dances then will relate to how you're doing. Very much like capoeira, right? So capoeira, they'll say that it's disguised dancing in a certain way. It is dancing, but the dancing is understood as a ritual inside of the warfare. Because if I can't move, it's the same thing you were saying about what I said in the last talk. I understand that when I step into space, I'm felt. And that's my N2 that people are feeling, my power, or another word people can say is ashe, right? Not the same thing, but it's similar in that respect. But you're feeling my power when I step into space, and how I then use it and how I then transfer that energy inside of the space. When I transfer it through my bois, through my body, through my feet. And then there are other things that ignite that. So the music, which are called lavways in Kalinda, would ignite that N2 spirit. The drumming, the drum patterns inside of Kalinda would ignite that spirit as well too.
Okay.
Yeah,
James,
it's very similar to chi. Yeah, very similar. So that vital force, that power, is the same energy. Yeah.
okay. So
And
you
also another word would be wanga. Wanga translates, it's a Congo word, Koongo.
okay.
But it's also a patois word as well too, and it translates as magic. Some people would say sorcery as well too, but it's that same power that you're using. People also transfer it in this space to be obia, right? Because the stick is a tool of divination, right? When I hold my stick, I'm understanding that I'm accessing a different space. The way that we hold the stick in Trinidad is very reminiscent for me of another term in Congo cosmology, called Kalunga. So the Kalunga line is the line that divides the spirit world from the physical world. And in the female body, especially, there's a genital Kalunga. So the space that a child exits is that Kalunga line. So the vaginal area is a Kalunga line. And it's just, Kalunga is literally water. So it's just a layer of water that's separating that space. So the limbo dance in Trinidad, as well as like a Kalunga line, right? So when we're holding the stick, for me, one of the reasons I think is because of that kind of energy and separating the two worlds, and also accessing that space as well too, and allowing the transmission to come through your DNA.
All right. Well, this picture is two worlds coming
It
together.
is.
Tell us about this picture. This is a very
This
interesting picture.
This is from a demonstration that Bois Academy did with the Kendo Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
There were some Japanese martial artists that came down, and we basically went to do different stick styles. So their stick style, their Kendo stick style, is very different from Kalinda because it's two hands that they're using. At Kalinda, we use one hand. So we never hit with both hands. Let me get my stick.
Yeah, get your stick. Get your stick.
I don't want to hit the computer already tried to jack up.
Look,
I don't want to.
I got my little stick with me. Go ahead.
All right.
Okay.
So there's different sizes of stick, right? So we would hold the stick this way. So I'm holding it this way right now, but I would never hold it this close because the whole point of it is to protect my head. So I want to be on the ends of the stick. And then it depends also where you're trying to brace. Bracing is not blocking. Yeah, you're literally warding off the energy in a certain kind of way. So I'm pushing back and out of the space. And I wouldn't just stand there and do it. Again, I'm using my entire being to do that. So I'm dancing. Yeah. And the dancing would then turn into different strategic patterns that we're actually making on the floor, which would then mirror the cosmology, the Dikenga. It's what the cosmogram is. So you will see it in the cosmogram. It represents different elements that are there, different primordial energies. So there's water, there's earth, there's fire, and then there's ether. Yeah. So if you back into the ether space, you're backing now into an ancestral space. You're backing into that other realm. So in Kalinda, we say we don't back. And we're not just saying we don't back, just we don't back. We don't want to back in. We're not backing into death when we're playing. Although, whole thing with Kalinda is to be beautiful, as Rondell Benjamin says, in the face of death. So we understand that stepping into that, death is not an end for us. It's a promotion into another realm.
Okay, that's deep. So, uh, did you get to play with the kendo artists? How did that work?
I personally did not. The sister that's in the picture, we were like literally just playing around on the side. And I thought it'd be really cool to make sure we have that picture of the two styles combining, and
Okay.
just also as women inside of the martial arts, to have that image out there, because representation and visibility is really important.
Yeah.
Um, because it's perceived that stick is a man's sport. And what we have to understand is that with any martial arts, especially with Kalinda, it's pushed forward by women in a certain way. What we have to understand as people is that none of this can happen if that woman's Kalunga line does not exist, because I have the power to shut off your life. You know, my mother used to say this thing that it was totally an insult, but she would say your mother should have closed her legs when she was making you. So the understanding the power of the woman, like I could be pregnant and I'm making a child and I could end your life way before it even starts. So I could shut off that pathway that's between that physical world and that ancestral world at any point. So we are the physical representation.
Right.
We are the spiral. We are that connecting spiral inside of Kalinda.
Yeah. That is definitely a powerful picture. Seeing those two black women in those stances. Definitely a powerful picture.
Yeah,
Um,
Rondo Benjamin, he played one of the kendo artists, and he has before. That wasn't the first time that he's done it. So just to see the different in the stick styles, Kalinda's very different. Um, there's a certain, and I don't want to use this word, but it is. It's Kalinda can be pretty brutal, and the brutality of it is not. It's not to harm. It's literally for a space of transcendence, just like in any other martial art that they explain. It's just our way of doing it is different. Um, Beyond my training with Benji and with King David, I've had dreams. So there's been Kalinda ancestors that come visit me and teach me things in my dream. And I've heard Benji say this before as well too. So Kalinda is not just taught in the physical realm. It's something that we literally are taught through dreams. So it's a direct, when I say direct transmission that happens, it happens that way as well too.
I would love to have an ancestor come teach me something in the dream. That would
Right?
that would be amazing. I have a friend of mine. He does. So I'm part of the SCA, which is the Society for Creative Anachronism. It's a living history society where you recreate medieval times. So I recreate medieval Benin, Africa. I have a friend who recreates ancient Rome, and so one of the things where he was doing with it was pottery. He was trying to do a pottery project, and whatever this project was, he couldn't get it. He couldn't figure it out, and it was racking his brain. And so he said he has a dream, and in his dream, like, he's sitting there, and his grandmother, who's passed, she walks up to him and she says, and he's like, "Grandma, what are you doing?" And she just looks at him. She goes, "You're looking at it all wrong." And she smacks him in the head. And when he woke up, he had it. Like, he just woke up like, and he ran to his kiln, and he did it. And he was like, "Yes, like my grandma came, smacked me in the head." And he was like, "That's exactly how she would do it." Like he woke up like rubbing his forehead, like, "Okay, I got it." So I would love to have the ancestors come teach me something in the dream. That must feel very good.
Yeah, and there's ways that we induce this in this realm as well too. So whether it be through liquid, so punching, whether it be through the different primordial energies that we have, whether it be through the love ways that we sing, or the drum patterns, all these things would induce that trance state for you as well too. So there's many times where I've gone to Maruga, which is American space, a maroon space, and the holder is one of the holders of Kalinda. They're Kalinda people, and the energy there is a raw energy. From the time that you enter Maruga, you feel it. Every time I've left Maruga And it's usually in a certain hour as well too, but just about any time. If I'm there around midnight or if I'm there in the midday, there's something that I feel. When I come back to my neighborhood, I still hear drums in my head, and I've looked around thousands of times, like trying to figure out where it's coming from. And it's not just drums. I hear drums and I hear live waves playing in my head, and it's not an imagination space. Like it's literally, I feel like it's in the room with me. And I think that's something that is definitely a part of African martial arts. We have to understand that we're dealing with something that's ancestral, right? So our access to liminal space is going to be different. And I do feel like in other forms they experience it as well too. It's just a different experience and a different way that they access it than we do. There's a live way that is one of my favorite live ways. I living alone. I living alone in the jungle. I living alone. I living alone in the jungle. I living alone in the jungle. Snake and lion, hard to humble. So the song is saying snake and lion have to humble, snake and lion hard to humble. So that space of being alone inside of your walk, inside of Kalinda, is how I interpret it. And I've felt that at many different times because it's definitely a walk that is alone, but it's a walk that is working inside of something I call the multiverse of self, where you might be alone having this walk, but I'm still my mirrored self. I'm still my ancestral self. I'm still my community self. I'm still my shadow self. I'm still my bois as my extended self. I am my bois, and I'm still my actual and ideal self all at the same time. So connecting to that means that I then have to connect to all the other things in the space that's basically doing a call and response to me, not just the song that the chanteur or the griot storyteller is singing, but what the drum is doing as well too. So everything is in this kind of pitch, call and response the entire time. And your connectedness is that you're inside of that spiral, connecting to that.
Man. So does everybody who play Kalinda, are they as deep as you, or is because
I would say yeah.
Okay. Man,
I would say yeah. The people that I know at least.
Kalinda, huh? Dang.
Say that again.
I said you got to be deep to be into Kalinda, huh?
The thing is, I think that any of our forms that we engage, there is that depth that happens.
Yes.
And we may not always be able to articulate it verbally, but we know what it feels like. We know it because we understand jazz music. We know it because we understand house music. We know it because we understand hip hop. All of those things are trace thoughts of Kalinda. It's the same sister. It's improvisation. It's call and response. It's the human dignity. It's the pride. It's the warriorhood. It's the being an elevated person, which in Bantu practice would be Bumuntu. So Muntu is basically an elevated person. It translates as person, but it's not just a regular human being. It is somebody who is elevated inside of their practice, inside of their living. So there's a certain vitality, a certain entu that we walk with as African people that we can't help but to be deep. Everything we put our hands on, our voice to, is going to be that. We're griots, you know. We're not just dancers. When we dance, we're being griots in movement in that way as well too. And we're creating a portal, because that's what Kalinda does. It creates a portal into a whole nother world, several worlds, you know, several different dimensions of time, of memory, of space.
Well, speaking of time, Ms. Philbert, we are getting close to the end of our time. This has been a phenomenal experience for me, as well as our viewers. You got to come back. I have so many different projects that like have been sparked in my mind just from talking to you. I have a dance. I have an episode where I want to do where we specifically dance and how the African warrior trained through dance. So I definitely want you to come back and be a panel on that. I have a movie idea for you. As well. I've had this movie. Yeah, you play the villain, but it's you don't know she's a villain till the end, and it's just a whole lot of stuff. So you have to come back. Thank you. This has been an amazing experience.
Thank you.
I enjoyed this. I'm sure my viewers did. Tell us how we can contact you. You have a new website
I
that
have
you
a
just
new website. You can reach me at www.jamiephilbert.com. JAMIEPHILBERT.com. One more thing I want to say before we go. Kalinda people are upstanding people. They are protectors. They are healers. They are magicians. They are mystics. They are beyond what people think stick is. It is not just a physical thing. It is exactly what the system says. It's a performance complex. So all of those things inside of that performance complex and then some. So yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, and
Big
please,
up to Trinidad and Tobago. Big up
yes,
to Bois Academy, to Rondell Benjamin, Art on
yes,
Purpose, and all my loved ones.
yes. Thank you. I want to thank Boaz Academy for letting me play that video that I played while we were on hiatus, while you were having your technical stuff.
Okay.
So I want to thank everyone, and I will provide links and everything. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Many blessings.
All right, man. That was amazing. I'm sure you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Thank you very much. We're gonna try again. We're gonna reschedule the two live streams that we had to cancel. The life of Nicholas Said, and the Haitian Revolution. We're gonna reschedule those. I'm not sure when, but we definitely will get those on. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to HAMA Live, and you folks have a good day.